welcome into another Soccer Down Here 1v1. My name's Jason Longshore. Really looking forward to getting into a number of topics with today's guest, Andy May, who works for BT Sport in the UK. Andy, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
No, it's great to speak to you again, and I very much enjoyed chatting to you about Atlanta United on my recent visit to the States.
Yeah, that was a great piece that came out and a great profile. I know a lot of Atlanta United fans were really interested to see what people outside of Atlanta think about it, and especially outside of the United States, because I feel like Atlanta United is in a really interesting spot locally where they've grabbed the attention of not just the soccer community in Atlanta, but the overall sports community here in a way that a lot of American soccer teams have struggled to do. Nationally, there's some weird looks at Atlanta because it is so new and they have kind of come out of nowhere. What's the perception of Atlanta United in the UK, for example?
People know about Atlanta United, not least because of Newcastle United's high-profile signing Almiron, and he was known really before that because on one of the UK networks, Sky Sports, they show MLS every week. Frequently, you can see pretty much every Atlanta United match, if not live on catch-up or through the highlights programs. And obviously, they've had people that we know in Europe, like Kenwyne Jones, Frank de Boer now, obviously in charge as manager. Tata Martino, obviously well known because he's the ex-coach of Lionel Messi. Darren Eales obviously is known within football circles, maybe not to the everyday fan on the street unless you're Tottenham or West Brom. But there's a lot of people there with a European connection. And I think it was one of the things I said to Darren actually while I was there, and Frank as well, that it feels like it's a kind of mini European club in many ways over in the States, Atlanta United. So they've done really well, I think, as well as Orlando City, because I was really impressed with how they set up right from the start with their franchise. People knew about them because of Kaká. So Atlanta didn't quite go down that same route with the huge marquee signing, a Ballon d'Or winner. But they've done other little things here and there which have had pretty much the same impact as Kaká on his own when he went to Florida.
Yeah, one of the things that we initially were going to talk about, it feels like 20 different news bulletins have gone out today that have grabbed our attention. I want to get into a couple of them with you. But the women's game, and it's something that we talked about offline, that it feels like Atlanta will have a professional women's team here soon. And I know you cover the Women's Super League for BT. What was this last summer like on the women's side for soccer in England specifically, because the Lioness has captured, I think, the imagination of the public.
Immensely so. In fact, I mean, our population in the UK, and if you break that down even further to England, because it was the England national team, is not very big. It's not anywhere near as big as the US. But amazingly, for the semi-final defeat against the US, almost 12 million viewers were watching on television here in the UK, which is an absolutely enormous number. It certainly trounced the number of people watching the England cricket team win their World Cup just about 2 or 3 weeks ago. It was massive. People were watching not only that, they were watching group stage matches involving Brazil, the hosts, France, Japan as well. It was a really big competition, and it was not on its own. It wasn't the only thing you could watch at the time. There was Wimbledon being played. There was the under-21 men's UEFA tournament. So it was competing with other events for the eyeballs, for the viewers, and it just did really well. And I think it's lifted the women's game in this country to another level. And I think we'll see a big increase in the attendances for the WSL domestic matches this coming season. And there'll be more interest as well, I think, in the Women's Champions League, which Manchester City have done well in recent times. Man City won the league, the WSL this year. There's going to be a few double-header matches, I think, taking place involving the men's teams like Arsenal, Man City, and then the women's teams also playing as well. And I think the men's teams that own a women's side as well will be much more open to using their main stadium and trying to get the fans of the men's teams to go and watch the women and build up the interest even further and actually get more people watching the match in the stadiums, because that's the key thing. And I think the ticket prices need to be reasonable. That's the key thing for next season, to keep this momentum going when it comes to women's football in the UK and England.
I think it's the same in the U.S. as well. I mean, the NWSL has gotten over that 3-year hurdle that professional women's leagues had here for so long, but now, they've still struggled to, I think, capitalize on what the U.S. women's national team has done historically. One element that is growing here, and I'd love to get your take on it, is that dual ownership with an existing club operating a women's team, and how we've seen in Portland, we've seen with Real Salt Lake and the Utah Royals and the NWSL how it's been very successful. Orlando and Houston have struggled a little bit with it. I think Atlanta would follow that model when that time comes. How has a Manchester City or an Arsenal benefited from having a top-level women's team?
It's different for all of the sides. Some are more involved, the men's team and the executives with the women's team, than others. You look at Arsenal, for example. Petr Cech played his last season as a men's professional last season here in England, and he was a big supporter of the women's team. I think he even actually bought them kit, or he definitely got involved, and he actually took out the whole team for dinner and paid for that himself because it was his last season. So he was a massive supporter of the Arsenal women's side. Jack Sullivan, who's the son of the owner, or one of the co-owners of West Ham, Dave Sullivan, he's heavily involved in the West Ham women's team as well. So there's that clear interaction between those two sides. Elsewhere, I think Manchester United are trying to get their women's team more integrated with the men's team in terms of training and dual events, but they're still catching up, really. They've only had one full season as an owner, if you like, Manchester United, of a women's team. But more and more men's sides are seeing not only the sort of ticker box value, we've got to do it, they're actually seeing that it's the next big thing. It makes commercial sense to have a women's team. And that's the beauty for me. It's not as if these teams, these owners are doing it because they feel they're kind of pressurized, they have to do it. They actually see the value. And that says a lot, I think, about the women's game.
Yeah, that's where it takes the next step for me. I feel like too often it's been looked at as a nonprofit exercise or a charity exercise.
Yeah,
and it's never going to survive that way.
Yeah, but this is it now. I think people are seeing that fans are out there. It's growing year on year, season on season. The World Cup's enormous. I just told you those numbers. It makes sense, and that's the great thing about it. And I think what has been key as well, I compared it with the cricket, which obviously has, well, not obviously if you don't know, if you've not lived here, but for the last sort of decade, it's been hard to watch cricket on television unless you pay money. Whereas those figures for the England women's team, that was on free-to-air television, and that certainly helped. And I know BT Sport have been very good at getting out the footage from the WSL to the mass audiences as well, not just making it through a paywall. So I think there's a balance you need to strike, really, when you're a league like the WSL, between obviously having the income from rights, but then also trying to get the eyeballs, and they all come together quite nicely, hopefully, in the end.
What are those next steps for the WSL in your mind?
The stadium thing is key, and keeping the ticket prices reasonable and attractive to new supporters, but then also having the teams like Manchester United invest in grassroots and keep the interest with the young people, because they're ultimately not only the future in terms of players, but the spectators as well. So I think we'll see much more investment in grassroots and in the academies that these women's teams have.
So as we were talking and digging into all of this, I definitely want to follow up as the season gets on with you on the Women's Super League. I've got to ask you about the Wayne Rooney news that broke this morning. Last night as well, we started to hear, well, maybe this is going to happen next year. Maybe it's a possibility. And then now he will be a player coach starting in January with Derby County. Did you have any idea this was going to happen?
I'm surprised, I must admit, because he's been a success at DC, and I actually spoke to him very recently. I went from my trip in Atlanta to go and talk to Wayne in Minneapolis, and he was loving life. He was really enjoying it. He gets on great with everybody in the camp there, and I know DC United love him. The fans very much like him, particularly when he scores from the halfway line. So I have to be honest, this is a surprise, definitely.
Do you see him as a player who can make that transition into management?
100%, yeah. Wayne Rooney is like a Jamie Carragher, a Gary Neville. He reads the game extraordinarily well. He knows the game inside out. He's got so many contacts as well. He knows players throughout the pyramid in England. He watches football religiously. He'll watch any league. He obviously loves playing on the PlayStation or the Xbox as well, playing FIFA and Pro Evolution Soccer. He lives for the game. He understands it, and clearly he has the respect immediately the moment he is either in a jacket or a suit as the boss in a dressing room. I think he will be a great manager. I think he's being sensible, though. He's not going in at the very top in a job, which he probably could do. He could get a Premier League job based on his experience and standing in the game, but I think he's being sensible, just like John Terry and Frank Lampard, obviously before him, who was himself manager at Derby, instead of going straight in at a Premier League club.
Yeah, what do you think about the situation that Wayne is going into with Lampard moving on for Chelsea and Philippe Cocu will be in charge? And it sounds like Cocu was really instrumental in going out to recruit Wayne.
Ambitious, and it's paid off. So you have to say big respect to him, because he had an idea there and he's made it happen. And yeah, I mean, a lot of people would have obviously said that Rooney would have at least another 2 full seasons perhaps as a player, maybe not with DC, maybe just one more there, or maybe he would go somewhere else for 2 years. I think it's a surprise in that it's happened now, and he will be finishing up as a player back in England. I didn't think that would happen. So I think he still has a bit to give as a player, but I think this is definitely a strategic move on his behalf with management in mind. I don't think he's coming back here because he wants to play in the Championship, play those 55 games a season. He wants to hopefully come back with Derby around the playoffs or better and be that sort of boost to get them into the Premier League. And then maybe he will be just a coach next season in the Premier League. Maybe he will finish his career with promotion with Derby. I think that would be the ideal, but obviously it doesn't always happen, and certainly not in the Championship, where it's a very competitive division.
Finishing up with Andy May of BT Sport. This transfer window, it's closing tomorrow for Major League Soccer. It's closing, I believe, tomorrow for the Premier League as well. A little bit different time frame based off the time zones. But is it just me, or has this felt like a pretty wild window with all kinds of twists and turns that have been unexpected?
The stakes are so high, aren't they? And it's like playing dominoes, because once a few big deals happen, many others follow. So obviously you've got Harry Maguire, who's left my team, Leicester City, for over £80 million, getting on for 100 US to go to Manchester United. Leicester will look to then recruit a replacement. Nathan Ake and Lewis Dunk have been in the sort of mix, I think, to be that replacement for Harry Maguire. Then Brighton and Bournemouth would look to sign somebody else. You've got Philippe Coutinho, who's now potentially heading back to England. What will happen there? That will free up more cash for Barcelona. Will they make a late move for Neymar? Will PSG then need somebody in to replace the Brazilian? So once a few things happen, the dominoes fall, and as we know, just because we're close to the deadline, it doesn't mean that we're not going to have a flurry of activity right at the death. And I'm certain we will see big deals, because those owners, those managers, the chairmen, the chairwomen, they panic a little, don't they, right at the end, and they think they've got to make a signing because they can't do anything until January, months down the line, and deals just happen right through to the very last moment.
We'll take DC United, for example, the Rooney news, and he is going to finish out the year in DC, the season, but now DC United is getting linked to Mario Balotelli and potentially next season Mesut Ozil, and they just made a trade within the league because they've had injuries in the defensive midfield. In the United States, the transfer window deadline day isn't really a thing yet. We're starting to see it pick up a little bit, but we're not seeing the round-the-clock, wall-to-wall coverage. What's it like being involved in it from a journalism standpoint on deadline day?
It's exciting because anything can happen, and lots of things definitely do happen. It's rare that you get a moment where you might be there. If I have been in the past at a training centre waiting to go on television in the car park, but it's rare that you have a moment where you're expecting nothing to happen. There will be players moving in and out, loan, permanent, it's very. I mean, the Tottenham thing last season was extremely rare, where nothing happened. They didn't sign anybody. That just doesn't happen because of the stakes being so high, as I said. And I think deadline day will become more of a thing, your side of the ocean. I saw the other day Rebecca Lowe was working out in the gym, I think, and she was watching the transfer show on Sky Sports News, which was being pumped out on NBC. So I'm pretty sure we'll see her doing more stuff with deadline day, and then it will become more of a thing, I reckon, with MLS, just like obviously you've got the sponsored rivalry week and rivalry day thing going on. So I'm pretty sure deadline day will become more of a thing in the future.
Yeah, when we get these deadline day, round-the-clock days where it's the first half of the day is the Premier League, the second half of the day is running up to the MLS deadline, it's going to be interesting. I think that day's coming pretty soon. Andy, we could talk all day, but you're a very busy man, and you've got things to take care of, so I'm going to let you go. We're going to talk again soon about the Women's Super League because I want our fans to understand when you look at NWSL and its growth, it's happening around the world too, and I think the Women's Super League now is going to be available in the United States to watch as well for free online. So it's something that I hope is followed more.
Yeah, for sure. It's been great chatting to you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the campaign with ATL.
Hopefully. We'll see how the Open Cup game goes tonight. Thanks, Andy. Appreciate it.
Take care.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinski of Apolinski & Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.